Are your daily habits building your future or quietly destroying it? If you ever said, oh, I'll get to this work later or I'll finish this later and then turn on Netflix, this episode is for you. Hey, I'm Scott Peck, the founder of Bricks Mortgage. It's a brokerage we started 4 years ago and have already surpassed over $4 billion in mortgages. You can check us out at whybricks.com. Today, I'm going to be talking about a heuristic, a mental shortcut that we use called hyperbolic discounting. It's a shortcut that we use to trade long-term goals for cheap short-term substitutes. And it's why our business plateaus, why we don't get the things done that we say we do, and even why clients make dumb mortgage decisions. It's always because we're not thinking about our future self, we're thinking about our current self. I'll share with you in this episode how you can resolve some of this. And also at the end, this is a repost of an old show. I'm going to share with you a couple of new ways that I think and solve this problem today, because this is a problem that doesn't go away. Hey, before we jump into that, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Omwell. Omwell is an amazing tool for Canadian mortgage brokers. It allows you to send these amazing reports every month that are they look great, but also they get a ton of open 60 to 80% because it's for the clients and it's their home equity and their buying power, and people care about that. And what we found is that these opened emails create conversations. Those conversations create deals. Check them out at omwell.ca and check out this episode. So as I said before, I'm doing a series called The Science of Brokering, where I'm taking a principle from psychology or sociology, and then I'm trying to figure out how you can use this to help you run a better, more productive mortgage business. This current series is all about cognitive biases, which are these evolutionary shortcuts that were really helpful in making decisions when life wasn't as complex, but they can go against us and we can make not as good decisions. And so the one today is called hyperbolic discounting. And so basically it's a bias that we have where people will tend to choose a smaller immediate reward rather than a larger reward later on. And so an example of this was, they said, hey, do you want $100 today or do you want $120 in a week? And most people will take the $100 today. It's kind of like, I'll take the $100 today, thanks. They had another group of people and they said, hey, will you take $100 in a year from now, or would you take $120 a year and a week from now? And everybody chose, well, I'll take the 120. It's the same amount of money, right? So you'd think rationally, be like, well, I'm going to get $20 more for 7 days or 20% more for 7 days. We should make the same decision, but we don't, because we will always value things that are immediate and that we can get our hands on today. So it can result in some poor decision making because it incentivizes impulsivity and immediate gratification. You've probably heard about the Stanford marshmallow test, where they put a marshmallow in front of a little kid and said, hey, if you cannot eat this, when I come back, I'll give you another one. And then the kids are, trying to not eat it. And they found that, fast forward 20 years later, the kids who had trouble with, that would eat the marshmallow had typically lower SAT scores, higher BMIs. Like they tended to do not as well in life because they couldn't delay that gratification. There was another study done where high school dropout rate. So there was a state where they basically said, look, we're seeing the dropout rate. This was in the 90s. Dropout rates is really high. And so because these kids were thinking about to now, they're like, I just want to have fun now. I don't really care about future me. I'm thinking about me today. And so what they did is, in order to create an incentive for them to stay, they said, if you drop out of school, you're going to lose your driver's license. So as soon as they did that, the school dropout rates dropped by 30%, and it's not because everybody all of a sudden was like, I'm going to stay in school. It was like, hey, I'm going to lose this immediate benefit if I drop out of school. And they were trying to engineer these kids to stay in school. So it's really interesting how this is something that we can all fall susceptible to. And why it happens is that ultimately we're present moment bias. We'll always take the small reward now. Our brains are wired to choose the immediate thing. It's kind of like, if you're back in hunter-gatherer days, can I get one, gazelle today or two tomorrow? I'm taking one today because I don't know if I'm going to get one tomorrow. And so in that case, sure, it makes sense. But when, our hunter-gatherers didn't have to think about investing for their 70-year-old self. They didn't have to think about, the ramifications of a bad diet over the course of the next 20, 30 years and how that's going to show up. And you're going to have health issues. And you're not going to be able to spend time with your grandkids. And so all of these things can happen. And so the challenge of immediate survival obviously took precedence. And so with this cognitive bias, we go, I'll take less as an immediate rather than more later on. And so how does this show up in your mortgage business or relate to it? And so when I thought about this, the key thing I think about here is that we tend to, is really around mindset and goal setting. So we'll set these great long-term goals for our business. I want to work less days. I want to take some holidays, all of these things, but we don't end up doing them because we get sucked into the day-to-day. Or we know there's some things we need to work on in our business, but we don't do them because we'd rather watch Netflix. I should really, go rework this whole part of my business, but Netflix right now seems like a lot of fun, and having a glass of wine, you've got to do those things. But when we value the present self over the future self, it's a problem. And so there's a great clip where Marge is talking to Homer about, hey, these kids are growing up. You're not going to spend much more time with them. And then Homer's response is, hey, that's a problem for future Homer. I don't envy that guy, right?
Someday these kids will be out of the house and you'll regret not spending more time with them.
That's a problem for future Homer. Man, I don't envy that guy.
Which is hilarious, but that's what we do to ourselves all the time. We don't, worry about our future selves. I think our mortgage clients do this when they'll choose a low rate mortgage that potentially has, more restrictions or fees because they don't think their future self's ever going to worry about those things. But how many of you have seen clients come in and go, oh my gosh, why did I choose this? I can't believe this. What was I thinking? They're distraught about the whole decision they made at the time because they weren't worried about their future self. They're worried about themselves today. So that's kind of one of the ways that I see it showing up in, the mortgage conversation. So how do we combat this? So this is great, Scott. We have a tendency to want to do the things that are immediate versus longer term. So I personally, I have ADD. With ADD, you typically have a high level of impulsiveness, low level of follow through on long-term goals. And so this has been a struggle for me. But what's been very helpful and what has literally changed my whole life, including work and personal, is having a morning routine. And so I have this morning routine that I go through. And one of the things I do in my morning routine is I actually have a 23-year vision for my life. So I've got this written out, what it's going to look like when I'm 70. What am I doing? What does that look like? Of course, I might not live to be 70. You may be like, Scott, that seems crazy. I didn't think I'd live to be almost 50, but here I am. And so I can either not have a plan or I can have a plan. But when I do this, when I look at what I want my life to look at 70, and by the way, I'm still in the training business because I absolutely love the training business. But then I visualize it. I actually picture myself. So it's not enough to just look at this thing. You've actually got to get the emotional attachment to seeing future self, right? See future Homer and be like, future Homer doesn't want that. Future Homer wants this. So that's the first thing I do. The second thing I do then is then I go backwards and I look at my next 3 years and I got this vision that I have for them 3 years from now. What does that look like? And I get really detailed, and then again, I visualize what that looks like. So then now I've done the 25-year, future Scott, future Homer, and then I do 3 years. And then I look at my goals, my short-term 12-month goals, and that helps me stay on track. And so as a guy who's really struggled with focus and, anybody that's known me for a long time would be like, man, that guy, he's creative, but he can be all over the place. This has been a huge game changer for me. So my encouragement to you guys, or my thought is that if you can start thinking about your future self, don't be like, Homer, think about your future self, visualize it, really get into the state of it so you know what that would look and feel and smell like. It will help you identify with that person, go, hey, I want good for that person too. I don't just want good for the current Scott. I want good for this future Scott as well. Hey, thanks again for listening. And when I went back and I had to listen to this episode, I thought, man, this was such a good reminder for even myself. And I thought, what am I doing differently now than I was when I originally recorded this? And one of the concepts that I learned is this idea of goal setting to the now. And it's from this book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. And it's the idea that you set this long-term goal. So you think about, remember those Russian nesting dolls? You got the big doll and then you got the little bit smaller doll and wooden dolls, and they keep getting smaller and smaller and the little tiny one inside of it. So if you think about your goals, just let's say a 5-year goal, 25 years is a long time for most people to think. But if you think 5 years out, where do I want to be? What do I want to be doing? What do I want my life to look like? Do I want to be on vacation and still, I was talking to a broker the other day, successful broker, doing $100 million a year, on vacation, 9:00 at night, still taking calls, still taking messages. And here's the reality is that it doesn't have to be that way. In their mind, they think it has to be that way because that's how but it doesn't have to be, because I've met other people that are doing $100 million a year. My friend Renee Hughes went away for 3 weeks, didn't touch her phone or her computer, and she just made different choices. So both people are right, but it's what they want to decide to aim at. And so I would say to you that, where do you want to be in 5 years with your business? What does that look like? Get very, very clear and detailed on it. I like to write it out in detail. I'm doing this. I'm sitting on a deck. I'm like, make it vivid and emotional, because if it gets emotional, it becomes more real to you and then you can aim at it. So then that's your 5-year goal. And then you got your 3-year, I like the 3-year goal after that. And then a 1-year goal. And then you got your 90-day goal. And each of those are basically, they all lead to that big 5-year vision that you're aiming at. And I have found that doing that and then reminding myself of, okay, which doll am I working on right now? Right now it's the 90-day goals we're working on. I got 90-day and 12-month goals that I'm working on. And some of the 12-month goals they're not something I can get done. And even in a weekend, it's going to take multiple weeks and it's going to be spread out over time. But that goal, hitting that milestone, will help me get to where I want to be in 5 years. And so I would just encourage you to think of it that way, because our brains are wired for the immediate. We're wired to do the thing that we like. And I think as Alex Ramosi says, if you want to be successful in business, you got to have a high tolerance for boredom, and you have to have a high tolerance for doing the thing that you don't want to do, because you're not always going to feel like it. And you need to make yourself do it anyway. Hey, I'm Scott Packford. As I always say, there's no problem in your mortgage business that someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem is who's got the answer. This podcast is designed to provide some of those answers. Thanks for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.